name is Kailas. Thank you so much for hosting this. My question is, what does a typical day in your life look like? Specifically from generating ideas perspective, like do you go look out for ideas, or do you screen, or like just ideas as you're reading through ideas come to you? And can you give me an example of it?
Well, my day in my life is very simple. I get up at about 5 in the morning. To be more detailed, I go downstairs, make myself a cup of coffee, do push-ups. I put my headphones on and I start writing. And I try not to talk to anybody during that time. And my kids are asleep, my wife is asleep, so nobody bothers me. So I write for 2 hours. So that answers the question that you didn't ask, because somebody else asked me this. How do I write so much? Well, because if you write 2 hours a day, 300 something days a year, you write a lot. Then I drive my youngest daughter to school. I come to the office. Twice a week, I have a trainer show up at 8:30, 9 o'clock. I work out. And then I do stuff that may not look very productive. In fact, people ask me if they could be my interns, or if they could shadow me. And I say, what are you going to shadow? How I'm talking to my friends on the phone, how I'm like staring at the spreadsheet, or how I'm reading, or so if it's a summer or winter, that part changes. But every day religiously I go for a walk in the park. In the summertime, I try to go right after I come to the office because it gets hot. In the wintertime, I go at noon because it's warmer. But my life is a kind of the bookends of my life are very structured. In other words, from 8 roughly to 4 or 5, I am not at home. It's either in the office or working in the park or whatever. Most of the time in the office. And from 5 to whatever, the rest of the time I'm home. And it's a very unstructured. Like on Wednesdays, I call it's my European day, because on Wednesdays I'm trying to be like European, and if I want to go to a coffee shop and sit there and sip espresso for 2 hours, I can do this. So I don't have any appointments scheduled at all. So my assistant knows that this day is blocked from my calendar. So I have this shortcuts that help me to create bookends and guardrails in my life. But it's really searching for ideas. A lot of times ideas come from reading Value Investors Club, or talking to my friends, or my analysts come to me and say, what about this? Idea generation is a very random process. It's a systematically random. In other words, you have to keep doing this, but you have no idea where they come from. And in addition to this, in my office, my kids told me that they didn't realize how weird I am until they got older, because they looked at other dads and they looked very different from me. So in my office, we have a room called a cave, which is a kind of a small, dark office that has no electronics. And this is where I bring my iPad, my work iPad, that has internet connection but doesn't have email or text or anything. And this is where I read, because I find it's very difficult for me to read in front of my computer, just sitting and reading, because it's not natural for me. So that cave has my father's paintings, has a chair, comfortable chair, and an iPad basically, and headphones. That's it. So that's my day basically. I don't know if it was helpful or not, but
It was helpful. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Hi, Vitaliy. First of all, thanks for the opportunity. My name is Milan from Germany, and my question is, do you think with the increasing capabilities of AI, the market efficiency will increase or decrease in the long run?
That's a good question. It's kind of interesting. What doesn't change about the market is the lizard brain. I keep using the word lizard brain, but people are as emotional as today as they were 100 years ago. You could argue today it's even more emotional because we have a lot more information, a lot more contradicting information. So from this perspective, I am not sure, unless AI, I mean, a whole bunch of AIs will be trading against each other, and people will be taken out of the picture. I'm not like, so the market. Okay, so let's talk about this market efficiency. The market efficiency has improved because the amount of information has improved. Like, I never thought I would be saying this, but when I got into the business, this was early days of internet, and getting stock prices into your computer at the time, unless you had a Bloomberg terminal, was very difficult. So we had a room where there was a computer-like device set that was connected to satellite, but that's where you got prices, right? SEC filings was difficult to get. So that is a great degree of market inefficiency. So that has changed, so obviously that's, so access to information now, I can learn about any company around the world in minutes. I can at least have access to information. Now you can argue that in the past it would be difficult for me to analyze Japanese company because all the financials were in Japanese. AI changes that, right? And so you can argue that it just became a little bit more efficient, right? That barrier has been lifted. But at the same time, trying to understand human psychology, the decisions, as long as they are made by humans, that factor will still be there. So it's a kind of a continuum, it's a spectrum, right? So how much of the access to information is part of it, but then you start thinking about other elements, and as long as people keep making decisions, you're going to have the inefficiency. People will, keep doing, keep looking for confirmation biases, keep buying high and selling low, kind of as a crowd. So I don't think as of this version of AI, and again, a lot of humility here, I don't think that has changed a lot yet. This, AI is surprising me every day. So ask me that question next year, see what my answer is going to be. All right.
Thank you.
No, my pleasure. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Uzair. I'm 14 years old. I came from Dallas, Texas. So your book talks about, like the book Soul in the Game, it talks about how you live a meaningful life. So for someone my age, still in school and figuring things out, what's one really important thing you learned that can help us deal with tough stuff and figure out what really matters? Thank you.
Wow. First of all, thank you so much for this. So the question is, how do I deal with tough stuff and figure out what really matters? I think it's up to you to figure out what really matters, right? The meaning is something you need to discover. The world will not, I or anybody else will not discover what matters to you. And it's kind of funny, you kind of answered your own question, because, or at least all the elements were in the question. If you figure out what matters to you, then it's going to be so much easier to handle the adversity, for you to become tough. Because, let me give you an example. So I'm an investment guy, okay? What people may assume that I know much about financial planning or taxes and stuff, I don't. And the reason I don't, because I really don't care about this, not interesting to me. So if I had to do somebody's taxes, that would be very painful and would have no meaning to me. Okay, and my ability to doing this and survive the tax season would be very limited, because it's not in part of my why. It's not why I wake up in the morning. It's not. There was very little for me to, As an investor, I promise you this: if you become an investor, and I'm not saying you should or should not, but if you do, or actually if you do anything creative, period. Actually, any creative activity, and I would ask you, I would say that investing is a creative activity, that you're always going to have painful periods of time. It's just, in fact, it's a bug and a feature of creativity. That's what gives you, when you go through, so now I'm talking to you not as an investor, but as a writer, okay? As a writer, I cannot tell you how many times when I was writing the little book, I wanted to cry because I couldn't figure out how to get things to stick to, to each other. It was painful, but I love writing. It gives meaning to me. Did I love it at that moment when it was painful? No. But writing is something that's meaningful to me, therefore I was able to soldier through that. Okay, so your goal, and this is the same applies to my kids, is that find where, what's in your life has meaning, and if you find that, then you'll be able to get through the tough times. Okay, that's really, so remember that I told you, your question had the answer kind of buried inside of it. All right, thank you so much for the question.
Thank you, appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Hello again, my name is Mahindra Bhavani. I'm from Austin, Texas. First of all, huge thank you for the breakfast and special thanks for including the vegetarian choices for people like me. Now my question.
The thank you should go to my colleagues, Cyrus and Robert, so yeah.
So my question is about decision-making process, specifically in light of two extremes, like when two factors are pulling in two different directions. And I'll use a concrete example, considering the last 10 years of growth and all, Indian market probably is ripe for a very good infrastructure development going forward. But then at the same time, long-term political stability could be another extreme. So the two different things are pulling one in the right direction, one in the opposite direction. And you don't have to use this particular example, that was just an example. So in light of that kind of a situation, to borrow Charlie's word here, like what kind of a mental model do you use in your decision-making process?
That is a great question. It's a kind of a layup question because I just wrote about this, kind of. I wrote, like maybe a couple of days ago, I wrote about nuanced thinking. And nuanced thinking is basically when we are young, our parents kind of instill in us black and white thinking. So there's good and bad. I remember reading the book, my father reading me a book by a Russian author, which basically said, the title was, What is Good and What is Bad? And it kind of makes sense, right? Because your parents, you have a still undeveloped mind, and your parents try to instill values into you, okay? But then as you grow older, you realize that the world is more complex. And a lot of times, and I'm going to start to answer your question from afar first. Like you have people who both make good decisions and have good values and bad values, okay? And it's up to you to recognize that, and this person may become a hero and anti-hero at the same time. A hero, you learn from what to do. From the anti-hero side of the person, you learn what not to do. So when it comes to investing, you have these contradictions all the time as well, right? You look at the company and you say, this is a positive, this is a negative. Now, what's interesting about this, some things in investing, valuation can solve, okay? You say, this is the risk, okay, and if you can quantify it, you can see if it's already priced into the stock. I'm just, so you have that tool. Sometimes you look at the management and you see positives and negatives, and you have that contradict into each other, and you can't really synthesize them. In other words, you can't come to a decision, and this is the beauty of investing. You can move on. This is a gift in investing. If I only need 30 stocks, and like how I talked about China, there's 180 something countries in the world. I don't have to own Chinese companies because I looked at it, there is this risk that doesn't reconcile with me, I moved on. So if you look at India, or if you look at sector in India, or whatever, and you have these two conflicting ideas, which is, by the way, that's absolutely fine. And you can't reconcile them, and you can't say, okay, well, if I buy at this price, then this risk goes away, whatever, then maybe that's not the right place to invest. But I think our ability to handle this conflicting ideas is very, very important, because this is what breaks. I find this sometimes it breaks people's brains, because we are, especially when it comes to politics in the United States, right? We are kind of either left or right, black or white, and the nuance is missing. This is why I will never belong to a political party, because the party does not allow for nuance. Okay, and I want my kids, I want myself to be a nuanced thinker, because life is complex, and so my mental I guess nuanced thinking is my mental model. That's how I deal with that. All right, my pleasure.
Good morning. This is Tina from Hong Kong, and I want to consult you. At present, the recycling market for power batteries of new energy vehicles has broad prospects. I would like to consult you from the perspective of value investment. How can we assess the investment potential and the risks of the recycling market for power batteries of new energy vehicles? And what are the key indicators or factors that must be taken into serious considerations in the investment decision-making process? For now, we are looking for the partner and objective in America. So, thank you. Looking forward to you.
Thank you so much for this question. So, whenever people like me get on stage, you expect them to have answers for everything, okay? And sometimes people like me try to give you an answer for everything, even things they have known nothing about. I'm not gonna do that, okay? I honestly know so little about that market, and I can add anything I say about this is gonna detract from your knowledge. So I'm just, that's really my answer. But I think the lesson here is that, I guess the lesson actually more for me, not for anybody else, but it's when you don't have an answer, just don't say, I don't know. And Charlie Munger was very good at that. But that's my answer to your question. I really don't know. So, but thank you for your question. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Guillermo, and I'm from Canada. So thank you for your comments on Canada. I really appreciate it. My question is, I have two questions. So the first question is, what happens and what have you learned in your experience when you have an amazing company that the thesis that you're seeing is playing out and you're seeing the financial results really taking off, but the stock price is not reflecting that, and it's taking like years and years and it's not getting there to the degree that you expected? So what have you learned in those circumstances? And then second, we run this company called Y-Sheets, where we are trying to democratize the access to like financial data, price data, everything on spreadsheets. So I'm curious, what tools do you use for yourself or your analysis? And then if they could be the perfect tool for your analysis, what would that look like?
Well, thank you for the question. So the first question, like, I look at it as a gift, like, and I really mean this. So when I we owned. Okay, all right. Let's start over. I know how psychologically difficult it is for you to own a company where everything is working and the stock does not reflect that. Like those who've been reading my articles for a long time followed my investment in McKesson. I think McKesson thesis was like the company was doing better financially year after year after year. There were new headlines coming in and new risks coming in and out time after time after time. But during that time, McKesson's earnings kept going up and the stock price basically did not do anything. And then we got all the returns in 2 years. Like in a year or two, we got all the returns from the previous 4 years. We got them in 2 years and more. And so I think investing, if you own a company and fundamentals are, kind of keep marching to what you expect them to do, and the company is still undervalued, I would look at it's the issue here psychological. It's all about your personal psychology. I would look at your past examples where it required patience. So for me, McKesson, like the reason I mentioned McKesson to you, for me that's a roadmap. Like for me, that's an example where patient was rewarded. Now, I don't want to be deceiving myself where I own a company and the stock price is not going up, but the fundamentals are getting worse. That's a different story. Fundamentals, but I think you just realize that in the long term, stock prices reflect their fair value. But the long term may last much longer than you expect. And so this is and also this is why I'm diversified. So what's interesting about diversification is that it provides a psychological relief valve. In other words, McKesson may not be working out at this point in time, but something else is a different stage of its working out. So it allows me to kind of to calm my brain, I guess my lizard brain a little bit. So that's the answer to your first question. Second question, we use today basically two things. Like we use Capital IQ, and we use it because we use it. Not a huge fan. No, just listen. It's actually kind of sad because there's a friend of mine said this about Japan. Japan is stuck in the year 2000 since 1980. Just think about this phrase for a second. It's stuck in the year 2000 since 1980, so it's still in 2020. But Capital IQ has been ahead of its time, and now it's basically hasn't changed. So I think it's a good product, and it was a good product. Now it's a mediocre product, but it's integrated into our systems. If something came out that is much better, etc., it doesn't necessarily have to be cheaper. In our case, we would switch. We use Google Sheets to get a lot of market data from Google Finance, but we trade so little, so that kind of stuff is almost an afterthought. So it's and AI. I've been spending a lot more time on AI than anything else. So it's so that's I think whatever integrates AI better, probably going to be more important to me than anything else. So yeah. All right. Yes.
Hey, Vitaliy, thank you for taking the time out this morning. And, my name is Joe from Tennessee. The last 5 years, we've seen a lot of things changing since the pandemic and whatnot. And from a capital allocation perspective, what would you say would be, say, your 3 biggest mistakes you've made over the last 5 years, and what did you learn from that? And then also, you mentioned that you're not focused on forecasting things. But a lot of times we look at what isn't going to change. So what are the key things that you're focused on that are not going to change in the future that you see as being a big thing that's going to impact what you're doing going forward?
All right. Well, thank you for your question. By the way, just in the interest of time, I'm going to answer all the questions from everybody who's standing up, so who's in the queue, and then when there. So what's not going to change? I mean, it's kind of interesting. It's such a difficult question to answer because 3 years ago I would have said, well, you don't want to be, you want to become a programmer. And now I'd say you don't want to become a programmer because AI changed that. I think, I'm not sure I want my kids to become plumbers, but that's not going to change that much, I think. So when we look at our portfolio, this is the question I constantly ask myself. I mean, we're going to need energy. That's not going to change. What energy? That may change. So a lot of times it's kind of, we're going to need food. That's not going to change. Like I'm mentally, right, as I'm answering this question, I'm mentally going through my portfolio. Okay, let me put it this way. Our Maslow hierarchy of needs things are not going to change. The companies inside of them may change. Our need for security is not going to change. And therefore, I would argue our defense spending in Europe is not going to go down, but only going to go up. But it doesn't mean that every company in my portfolio will be the winner of that. So so that's kind of how I'm approaching this. Like I'm mentally, when I look at a company, I kind of look at the Maslow hierarchy of needs and I see where it fits in it. But obviously the question you're asking about technological changes and how they impact this. And it's almost like you have to analyze every company with a lot of humility, knowing that just because it's done so well over the last 100 years or whatever, the future is not promised to anything anymore. So it's just the rate of change increasing so much. So I'm not doing a great job answering your question because, in all honesty, I'm not sure I have such a great answer. So this is me trying to come up with an answer as I speak. But this is kind of, maybe at some point I'll write about it and I'll be able to answer it better. But as of right now, that's all I got. Sorry. And what was the other question? My biggest mistakes.
What do you see as the biggest capital allocation mistakes?
Well, I think the previous 3 years I probably made fewer than before, which is a good thing. Which just means I learned. I would argue like the obvious one, that my cable stocks so far have been capital misallocation. I'm kind of questioning myself whether I'm just at this point am I being just can be right in the long term. I'm being stubborn. I'm at this point. I think I'm still going to be right in the long term, but we'll see. I should have bought Bitcoin. I don't know. It's just, but actually, I don't look at it as a mistake, obviously. Okay, let me answer this question. I'm sure I made mistakes, and this is either my memory blocking them out just to avoid the pain, but let me tell you the mistakes I usually make the most. I sell too soon, and those mistakes I usually cost my clients the most, because, and I think I talked about this in the past, but if I'm wrong on a stock and I'm really, really wrong, and it declines 100%, let's say it was a 3% position. Let's say it's 5% position and declines 100%, the loss of my total capital is 5%. Okay. Now let's say the same 5% position and it doubles and I sell it, and then it goes up 3 or 4x, which has happened to me. Well, my opportunity cost loss was actually more like 20%, whatever that increases. So in the past, I would argue that my biggest mistakes were not actually loss of capital, but the opportunity cost of my sale decisions. Now, sometimes I sell for the right reasons and the stock goes up for the wrong reasons. Those are not my worry. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this company where I just got impatient and I sold it too soon, and the fundamentals continued to play out as I expected, but I just got emotionally drained. Those are probably my biggest mistakes in general. It's just so it happened to be the last 3 years. Fortunately, I'm not apologizing for this. I don't have a lot of those like big capital allocation decisions. So, all right, thank you. Yeah.
Hi, this is Viral Shah from Southampton, UK. Thank you for having us. I'm a retail investor and manage a few small portfolios for my friends and family. I just would like your advice or suggestion regarding how do you suggest incremental money that comes into investment or dividend income or some additional cash, because it's very difficult to add some additional money to existing portfolio, or whether do we want to just keep it as a cash or just invest into the position that have gone up or gone down. It's practically sometimes it's difficult to invest the incremental money that comes every month. So how do you practically suggest, what's your approach?
It's kind of interesting. I don't think this way. And so I know what you're describing because we have this all the time. You own dividend paying stocks, etc. So we basically, I don't saying this 2% came from dividends, this 2% came from something else. Or from a stock sale, etc. I just look at cash as cash. Okay, I don't earmark it to where it came from. So when we are looking to buy stocks, I'm just saying, well, do we have cash or not? That's a, now, if a client gives us a significant amount of money, let's say somebody has $1 million account, they give another $500,000, then we have a model and of companies that are undervalued and we spend it that way. But I'm not constantly thinking about how I'm going to reinvest those dividends because I just think about it as cash. And I'm thinking about, do I have ideas to, this company declined and fair value hasn't changed, now it became more attractive, I add more to that. So that's my thinking on this topic. So I'm not sure I can, that's the only way I can answer it, I guess. That's, my pleasure.